It's a great place to live. I mean, it's nice neighborhoods, good people, great schools, a lot of, good community, people, give a hoot, and, and care and stuff like that. And I think they're all things that I think recommend itself. They're all the attributes that you would look for.
So I'm sitting here today with long-term Southlake resident Chris Holland. He's been here for 29 years, and what a lot of people don't realize about Southlake, Texas, is that over 50% of the residents here have lived here for 25 years or longer. One of the reasons I contend is that primarily there's nowhere better to go. So Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I know that Southlake has gotten a reputation around DFW as being, kind of a stuck-up place. Now, that hasn't been my experience, but I wanted to hear it right from the horse's mouth, so to speak, as far as what's been your experience living here and being a resident here for the last 30 years.
I've enjoyed it. I think, down deep, most folks are, pleasant, friendly, sociable, willing to at least, pass on the street, chat, and kind of acknowledge you're still around, and they care, I think a little bit, and but it's a fun place to live. You wouldn't give them the choice of saying, well, where the heck else would I go? And I can't think of any place. I'm sure out there somewhere, someplace, there's a second Southlake, but gosh knows where it is. And why take the gamble? Keep with what you got.
So obviously, being here the last 30 years, you've seen a lot of changes to the city and a lot of growth. What's been your experience like that? Do you think that's been good for the community or not so good?
Oh, I think it's good for it. Everybody, especially an old guy like me, gets somewhat resistant to change. It's like, that was fine before. Why did they mess it up? And they've done a lot of good things. They put the town center in, and that's got all kinds of neat places to go. They put the median down the middle of Southlake Boulevard, which makes it a pain in the neck to turn left and get home. But I loved it back when there was just a 2 or 3 lane highway. But that's progress, and it makes sense. I guess wish they'd have put a curb cut in front of my house, but going up and around it is not bad. But all in all, I mean, it's all grown for the good. The school system has, gotten immensely better. My son went there and played on some of the championship football teams years and years and years ago. And, back in the day when they were probably 3 or 4A, and see them grow through all the pains of moving from the small schools to the monster giant schools now. And it's a good place, and a lot of people have gone on from here to do good things. Football players, you'd say, you can watch the NFL and say, hey, you used to play for Carroll. And say, wow, kind of neat.
So talk to me a little about, you mentioned a little bit off screen that you and your family still basically live together, your children and your grandchildren.
Yeah, my wife passed away, and we have just a big old monstrous house here in Southlake, way too big for a single old man, so they moved in, and it works out great. I mean, there's nothing that's ever perfect, but it's a chance to watch Reagan grow up and get a perspective of, just what kids and stuff in schools in Southlake and what have you mean and do. It's a good place to raise kids, especially grandkids, because you can spoil them and do all that sort of stuff, and then just say, go back and see your mom or your dad if you have problems. But it's a good, healthy environment, great place to, like we were saying earlier, launch your kids from.
Right. Well, I have 4 young kids. I have twin 6-year-olds, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And before we moved here, we looked pretty much all over the country looking for basically the best place to raise them. And that was one of the big deciding factors with us moving out here. But I know that when we got here, there was a lot of concern about Southlake being kind of a hoity-toity type of area. That has not been my experience at all. We're going to do more videos on that about the neighborhoods and things of that nature. But if you could kind of talk about that a little bit, and what's been your perception and your take on some of the, I guess, different elements that Southlake has changed over the years?
Well, I mean, Southlake's certainly grown up, gone from a sort of a rural community with ranches and stuff up and down Southlake Boulevard to a much more affluent suburb and what have you. And, there are folks who live here now are way different, probably economically, than the ones who lived here 30 years ago when I got here. But people are what they are. I mean, you sometimes say, well, gosh, all these people act like they're rich. Well, yep, they are. There are some folks that probably are more ostentatious than others, but I guess we've got to let folks be what they want to be. It's why they make vanilla chocolate and strawberry. Everybody has a favorite.
Very, very true. Very, very true. Well, what is your future in Southlake? What would you like to see the city? In what direction would you like to see it go?
Oh, I think it's on track. I mean, it's it continues to like focus on its schools and its environment, and try and I think manage the growth pretty intelligently. It's mostly residential with enough probably retail and commercial to support people's needs and wants and desires. And it's maintained a good balance. You just hope that they can continue to sort of do that and do all the trade-offs between business and infrastructure and residential and keep the balance. Of course, they reach the point too where there's not a hell of a lot more room to do much of anything. So you're
there's not a lot of land left. That's for sure.
You're sort of tearing it down and starting over. There's not a lot of room for more or new and different. So I don't know. I think that they just keep going like they've been going. The evolution has been pretty reasonable. I mean, they haven't built something ugly on the street corner across from my house yet. So they do good. I would say they just stay the course. If I can steal that from somebody, and off we'll go.
So, what advice would you have to families out there across the country or the world that are considering making Southlake home?
It's a great place to live. I mean, it's nice neighborhoods, good people, great schools, a lot of, good community. People, give a hoot, and care and stuff like that. And I think they're all things that I think recommend itself. They're all the attributes that you would look for. Can you find them elsewhere? Yeah, given the breadth and size of the country, I'm sure there's at least one or two more. But, I mean, this is, I don't know what the expression is.
I would consider it a bubble. I mean, not only Southlake, but if you look at Colleyville and Keller, and you really can't go wrong in most of these neighborhoods.
No, of course, they're all Southlake wannabes. So.
Yes,
but they've grown up and kind of, probably taken the best or modeled themselves a little bit after what Southlake was probably a little bit of on the leading edge, but now they all have their own town square or equivalent to that in Colleyville and Keller, and maybe not as as advanced or as developed yet, but they'll get there.
Very, very true. Well, Chris, I want to thank you so much for your time. I know that you're, waiting for your grandkids here and taking them food, and I really appreciate you sitting down with me.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thanks for asking me.
Anything else you'd like to add before we go?
No, I'm pretty good. I probably run my mouth way too much already.
Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Well, there you have it. Official Southlake resident who's been here for over 30 years. Great man. Really enjoyed our conversation. And if you're looking to move to Southlake, Chris Holland's another reason why you should consider making Southlake your next home. Thanks.